All right, so I guess I'll start in three, two, one. Hey guys, this is Casey back again with another episode of Countercast. And here with me is a special guest and admin of Gleasonator.com, Alex Gleason.
Hello, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I really appreciate this. This is like a pretty big honor. So, like getting an admin.
Likewise, you're a big personality on the Fediverse.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know if I go that far, but thanks.
You're welcome.
um, yeah. So, one really big reason that I wanted to have you on is kind of like talk about like your um role in like the Fediverse and kind of how you got started.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, I can tell kind of a story about that. It's kind of like my whole life story up until this point, but I can try to keep it brief.
okay.
So, in 2016, I moved to Philadelphia to work with a digital agency on an open source CMS they were building. And
Hmm.
I started going to vegan restaurants there because I'd been vegan for a couple of years. And I met some activists, and we got involved in animal rights activism. Next thing I knew, I was going to like these vegan animal rights demonstrations in grocery stores and slaughterhouses, and I gave a few speeches on a megaphone about animal rights. And I met
Hmm.
my partner, Mary Kate Fain, there, and
Nice.
we coordinated a bunch of animal rights demonstrations. I ended up taking over that group, and we grew
Ooh.
to be like a pretty large animal rights group in Philadelphia. And
Nice.
we moved into a communal activist house together, which I sort of put down all the money for and organized all of it. And things were going pretty well. And then one day, uh, three of the roommates announced they were moving out together. And we were like,
Mm.
why? And they said, because of your views on transgender issues. And
What? And how? And like by now, you guys have been living like together for like how long?
I think so. That house was actually a total disaster. It was like it was a really nice house in Philadelphia, four-floor apartment with a finished basement, and we had all of our animal rights meetings there. And it was really just
Okay.
like a cornerstone of our activist group. But it had a super high turnover rate where there was like one, I think over the course of a year, there was 12 people who lived there. So it was like a turnover rate of one
Ooh.
person, one roommate per month. Um,
Oh.
but we'd been able to handle it when it was like one person is coming and going, but then three of them all left at once because of my views on transgender issues. And so then, I mean, at that point, my life comes crashing down on me. Like the we have to move out of the house and find a new place to
Mm.
live. And
So like the people who own the house kind of like kicked you out, right?
well, I started the house and we kind of all like were renting it together. But because
Mm.
a majority of people all left at once, there's no way we could fill those rooms again.
Ah, I see.
And we had just been so tired by this point. So how does this all relate to the Fediverse? Well, that encouraged me to start up Spinster. Um, and there's like a lot of more nuance to the story and stuff that happened in between.
Hmm.
That I don't know. Maybe I'll write a book about it at some point because there's so much there. But I had been a member of Toadon.nl originally when I joined the Fediverse because I've always been super into software freedom and the idea of
Hmm.
Mastodon was super exciting to me. And I got kicked off of Toadon because of an article that I wrote called Why I Don't Agree with Transgender Ideology.
Mm.
And that was pretty disheartening and
Yeah.
kind of led me uh, to create Spinster with Mary Kate Fain. And I guess that's kind of like a brief intro to how I got started in the Fediverse.
Nice. So with Spinster, I think if I remember correctly, Spinster originally was built off of like the Gab software that they created, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I guess like this could like kind of lead to like a couple other things, but just like kind of like briefly. So what inspired you to kind of like take Gab software and use that as like
Yeah.
the base for your instance?
Yeah, so I had actually deployed a Mastodon instance previously called animalliberation.social, and this was sort of like when I was involved with the animal rights group. And
Mm.
I knew about Mastodon, and I like kind of knew how it worked. But then by the time it actually seeing Gab release Gab Social is part of what inspired me to create Spinster, because I had just been wanting to create a gender critical server for a very long time, and
Hmm.
it kind of just pushed me to go ahead and do it because I thought the user interface was so good. Um,
Of
but
Gabs.
yeah, Gabs. But Gab also put all of their branding into Gab Social, and
Mm.
uh, I wanted to build something that was like had its own custom brand that wasn't really associated with Mastodon or Gab or anything. And so I ended up forking Gab Social and replacing all of the assets with new Spinster stuff. And
Mm.
I kind of just kept developing the software for Spinster, and there were some bugs that Gab Social had that I was able to fix in my fork of it. And that kind of at some point we decided that we wanted it to be its own thing that other people could adopt, so
Hmm.
we changed it from Spinster to Soapbox, and now Soapbox is like a generalistic piece of software that anyone can use to deploy their own server, and it allows you to upload your own sort of custom branding logos and stuff into it, so that it doesn't have a you basically set the brand of your own site.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool because I do think that a lot of um, because one thing I find in the Fediverse is that, like there's a lot of like Mastodon instances, and so that's why a lot of new
Right.
like users are confused because they go to all of these like people say, oh, check out these instances, and like people like see like examples of, oh, I'm on this Mastodon instance, and then people are like, oh, let's go to like I don't know Mastodon.social and all like
Right.
sign up there, and then like they might run into like a few other instances, but they all look the same on the surface, and they all say
Exactly.
Mastodon, and I'd love to see like instances kind of move beyond that because there's like this conception that like all Gab instances are the same or all Mastodon instances or Pleroma instances are the same, which I guess in some respects they are a little bit, but there's like a lot of diversity like just among like Mastodon instances.
Yes,
So
I
like
agree.
it's not it's not like 100% fair for like all of them to like be viewed as the same, but I think part of it is just like the branding, which I think is why like you'll see like a lot of right wing users using Pleroma, for instance, at least
Yes.
from what I've seen.
Yeah, it
And
did
I guess it's probably
definitely.
because of like FSC and stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily put them in a box of right wing, but I would definitely say there are political differences, sort of generally among who uses what software, and it's like it's kind of
Hmm.
silly because it shouldn't
Yeah.
be that way because there's just like objective pros and cons to each of the pieces of software. Like
Hmm.
Pleroma is super fast, for example, and you can run
Yeah.
it with like low hardware requirements. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's definitely. I think it's kind of a problem that Mastodon and Pleroma instances like kind of all look the same. Um, and not to generalize, I think people actually probably customize Pleroma more than they customize Mastodon because they give like a little bit more tools in Pleroma to do so. But like
Mm.
people, uh, I think people just like assume that it's all the same thing, and it's not helped by the fact that there's that contributors covenant thing that they try to push for on joinmastodon.org, where like
Yeah.
they try to have like this unified set of rules and this like
Right.
yeah, like there's special servers that are part of this special Mastodon thing.
It's a club.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but I do think in order to move up, like with the Fediverse, we need to appeal to people, um, to accentuate the fact that the servers are different and to appeal to a certain demographic of people with each server.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. Those are like really good points. And the big, I think I'm not sure what is gonna happen. Like, do you see a future where like each instance has its own branding and we move away from this, or do you think we're just gonna continue to see like this cult identity? I feel like with Mastodon, there's less of a chance of that happening than with like Pleroma and others because just already the branding is like super strong and
Hmm.
there's already kind of such a binding community, and plus you have the what was the I forget the name of that site again, Mastodon, join
Yeah,
mastodon.org I
join
think.
mastodon.org. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have like that site where they're like, oh, you have to like have these like Mastodon rules if you want to be part of the site. So it's already like the site has Mastodon branding. It's just the software is just the software. The software is not the instance, and it's really easy for the lines of the two to
Yeah.
be blurred.
Yeah, I agree. Uh, and I think that one of the problems that the Fediverse is going to be facing and is facing is being overwhelmed by choice. And it's like
Mm.
this is why we have fast food menus where you have like the number one, the number two, and the number three or whatever. Because like when you
Right.
have when you have like 100 choices, it's really overwhelming. You're like, oh, do I want this one or do I want this one? And
Mm-hmm.
um, it's one of the strengths of the Fediverse that there are so many choices, but at the same time, it's also going to be something that's going to potentially harm adoption of the Fediverse because people have to really like
Mm-hmm.
research into which instance am I going to join, and like I know you joined like five of them, for example, before you sort of settled on which ones that you wanted. But
Yeah.
I'm afraid that not a lot of people are going to do that. They're going to just pick one and then
Mm-hmm.
either have a bad experience and then generalize that bad experience to the whole network, or
Ah, yeah.
they just won't pick one at all because there's too many choices and they don't know which one to
Mm-hmm.
start with. Or they'll just pick Mastodon.social, which is like the flagship Mastodon one, and like,
Mm-hmm.
uh, or pick Gab, I guess, or pick Spinster. But
I mean,
Mastodon.social,
I'm not envisioning a lot of like new
yeah.
Fediverse users going to Gap. Like
Well,
just because of like as far as like just normies, I guess
yeah.
joining the Fediverse, Gab has a lot of bad press. So if they go to Wikipedia
Hmm.
and like just see like the first few sentences, just like far right user base, and they're just like, oh, okay, that's not for me,
Well, I think people join Gab.
which is fair.
Yeah, I think people will join Gab for the sake of joining Gab without knowing or caring what the Fediverse is. And I think that's actually
Mm.
an important thing. And that's kind of how I'm imagining it works with Soapbox is that you create a Soapbox site and then people are enticed to join it for some reason other than the fact that it's part of the Fediverse. And then
Mm.
they're introduced to the Fediverse like
Mm-hmm.
after
I
joining
mean,
it.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I kind of that. I mean, that's a good point because I think that in an age where you see a lot of instances moving towards blocking each other for having political differences, to be able to be like, okay, I'm gonna join this instance because of like the people on there, instead of like how kind of how I approached it was, okay, I'm gonna stick with Quoto because it seems to federate the best out of all of the other ones I'm on,
Yeah.
and it has rules that'll let me say what I want. Um, so it's good kind of to have that security of just being like, well, as long as I'm on the instance with that has all the people that I like, then I'll be fine.
Yes. Yeah.
Although I mean, how I personally view like the Fediverse is like it's kind of like this big like the Fediverse is like the world, and I can just walk around and make new friends. But kind of the instance is like all of like my real friends or like the people that I'm close to in general. And like I might make a few friends, you know, that aren't like necessarily close in proximity to me. Those would be like similar to friends who are who live like in other states or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of how like friends in different instances work, and they're under different rules too. Uh,
Right.
but quoto, like for instance, like for me, I'm gonna like reach out to quoto people more often as far as like finding new users and stuff and making sure that I welcome them versus checking the global timelines.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, I think there's like some struggles with centralization and decentralization there, because uh, I think one of Mastodon's philosophies is that you should be able to join any server and it's pretty much the same. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that seems to be at
Mm.
odds with their other philosophy that every server can set its own rules. And it seems like it's,
Right.
you know, um, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting quandary, and I do wish that it was kind of because centralization is like easy for people who just want to use something and just be like, I just want to go in Mastodon and sign up for Mastodon.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
when it comes down to like people having different instances, I'm actually so that I've been like really like busy and tired and whatever. So I've been like I'm taping an extra episode this week to so that I can like not have to do a podcast episode next week. But I was actually taping one today, and I was like, the Fediverse is really good for um, if you want to like have a safe space or like make like a club or whatever, or only have a place where you can only have your views heard and just make a what's it called, like a bubble, like a box full of
Right.
confirmation bias, because if you people left Gab or not Gab, sorry, people left Twitter because for two reasons. One is like Twitter wouldn't let them say what they wanted to say and kick them off for breaking the rules, or it was B, like people who wanted to keep on saying what they were saying, but they didn't want to hear what like certain people had to say because either they were harassing them or like being like politically edgy or whatever. So when
Right.
those two people clash on the Fediverse, it's not, you can't expect like the like the progressives in the left to like want to unify themselves with people like farther on the right
Well,
over like not liking Twitter.
yeah. I mean, the left is extremely divided right now in general anyway, in the United States at least, but probably in other parts of the world too. Like if you just look at
Hmm.
what's going on with the election right now,
Yeah.
the right is all pretty much rallying behind one candidate, and the left is like, if my candidate doesn't get the nomination, then I'm not voting for anybody.
Hmm. Which is terrible for the party.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's kind
Um,
of like what's going on with Mastodon a little bit too, or with the
yeah,
Fediverse.
yeah.
But
Um,
I also think the internet is kind of like fueling some of this political divide, because like we're
yeah.
dehumanizing each other a little bit more, and like
Hmm.
everything is distilled down into these little blurbs where we're just like uh,
Hmm.
almost like attacking each other, and there's no nuance and like, yeah, dehumanization.
Yeah, I think part of it, a little bit of it, is just like kind of people are chasing clout, right?
Hmm.
So if you go like on YouTube, a lot of like the people who are trying to be sensationalist and get a lot of attention, they're not being normal. They're usually not being nice either. I mean, you do have like some examples with like what's his name? I'm not sure if it's David Dobrik or whatever. I get my YouTubers mixed up. Um, but whoever it is who is spearheading the Million Trees or Billion Trees
Oh
project,
yeah.
um, so I mean there are instances like that, but generally speaking, like for people who are trying to get clout, what sells in a lot of cases is not like things that are unifying, but it's just like
Yeah,
conflict,
it's
right?
outrage, outrage.
Um, yeah, like debates will get more ratings than just like the normal news broadcasts,
Hmm.
or like somebody being nice to somebody else is not going to like get as many views as like somebody like sucker punching somebody else or
Totally.
committing arson.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So people like see that, and also those same people want to be popular. So they're not gonna go out and like be as nice to people as they can. They're gonna be confrontational
Yep,
or do something to get attention.
totally agree.
Um, let's see. Another thing that I wanted to touch on. I don't know if you wanted to talk a whole lot about like Gab.
Okay.
But I guess like kind of briefly, like what was your like how did you find out about Gab and what do you think
Yeah.
their role is like in the Fediverse, like good or bad?
Good. So I joined Gab after its move to the Fediverse. I saw the announcement that they were joining the Fediverse, and of course, my initial reaction, like many people, was to think, um, oh, that's uncomfortable because I don't agree with a lot of the users on the site. But
Mm.
when I thought about it, it's kind of just like, well, you actually touched on this in the last podcast I heard from you, about the marketplace of ideas and about like exposing people to different ideas. And
Mm-hmm.
overall, I would say that Gab's move to the Fediverse is definitely a good thing because it allows people to be exposed to people that they wouldn't normally be exposed to. But
Mm.
with
So
all
you're
of these
saying like it
Mastodon
exposes
instances,
Gab users. You're saying it like exposes Gab users to people who they wouldn't be exposed to, or Mastodon
yeah,
users, or both.
and vice versa. Uh, I mean, like probably the only argument that I've heard from Gab users that I haven't heard anywhere else is that the Jews are the cause of like every problem in the world.
Wait, you've never heard
So
that before?
I mean, like I've heard it before, but I've never heard anyone like really legitimately arguing for it. Um, but like it, I also don't think that that speech should be banned because like
Right.
it's so ridiculous. It's so easy to shut down.
Right.
When I was a user on Gab, which I was between July and like I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months, like I had a lot of discussions with these anti-Semites, and um, they did not convince me at all. I felt like I was shutting down. Yeah, I felt like I was shutting down like pretty much all of their arguments. Like it was
Yeah, it's not hard to do.
yeah, it was nice for me because I feel like I learned a lot about the Holocaust actually that I didn't know before. And so I would say that the fact that Gab allows anti-Semitism helped me personally grow by researching all of this stuff about the Holocaust and learning more about it, and then
Mm.
being able to argue against these ideas. And like I don't know, if we just never allow these conversations to happen, then no one will ever learn to argue against them, and
Mm.
no one who has them will ever be challenged by them, and they'll just sit in their echo chamber.
Mm.
Yeah. So,
Okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's I mean, those are some pretty good points. Um, I mean, so you don't think that instances like should silence Gab or anything like by default?
um, I'm not completely sure. I think that there are maybe certain instances where there's a good reason to. I wouldn't suspend them in most cases, but what I ended up doing in Soapbox is adding this little disclaimer in the Fediverse timeline where it actually says
Yes.
like, so I'll read you for Gleasonator. It says, "What is the Fediverse? Gleasonator is part of the Fediverse, a social network made up of thousands of independent social media sites. You have the freedom to block these servers or engage with them. Pay attention to the full username after the @ symbol to know which post a server is from. Blah 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 blah."
Mm.
So like, sort of try to just educate people about what the Fediverse is and that they can control what they see. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that because I think there's like this paranoia or something that Gab users are going to harass users on other instances, but I have never
Right.
really seen that happen. I think the only thing
Hmm.
probably that you might risk by federating with them is seeing something that could offend you. Um,
Right.
In which
What
case,
which I thought was like the whole point, or a lot of it.
yeah. Uh, and I mean, if it's going to offend you, okay, so I put this warning here on the Fediverse tab. Warning: this content might offend you. You have the freedom to block it if you don't want it. And so then
Right.
users can just choose to block Gab or like whatever,
Yeah.
or interact with it, whatever they want to do. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, I really think this paranoia that like Gab users are going to come and attack you with their vitriolic hatred. Like, no. I think for the most part, people don't really want to be antagonized on social media, and they don't follow people who have different opinions from them. So,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big part of it is like the global timeline because I don't think that Yugen, I think is how you say his name,
yeah, I don't
the
know.
guy who runs
Eugen,
Mastodon
Eugen, I
Social.
don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that he's envisioning like his users like chomping at the bit to go follow Gab users, and so that's why he was like, no, 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 let me block Gab before like all my people on my instance start following Gabbers.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of it is just like not wanting people to be exposed to what's on the global timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, I've never been like an admin, but I don't know, like from my perspective, like I don't see. It's kind of hard because you have to moderate your own users, right? And then
Yeah.
when you have like the option to perform moderation procedures on entire instances, I guess it might be like, are you gonna judge other instances the same way that you would judge your own users? So, like for instance, if I want to have an instance and say, you can't be an alt-right racist on my instance, then am I also going to block entire instances that have like users like that? Or what about users on there who aren't like part of those
Yeah.
facets?
I've kind of come to the conclusion that the best thing to do is to moderate your own users and kind of just leave the Fediverse alone
Mm.
for the most part. And I think that actually makes the most sense
Mm-hmm.
um, because then you're like, if other servers federate with you, then they have some expectation of what your users are going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
But um, and then it gives your users the most freedom to handle other servers the way that they want to.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it seems kind of like a little counterintuitive at first, but I actually think that's the best solution because previously, like, I'm no longer involved in the administration of Spinster at all, or moderation or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that, but I was when we first built it. And previously, what we were trying to do is not block any servers, but moderate every single remote account to the same standards as local users. And
Mm.
that just got like it's just pointless. Um, people,
Yeah, I bet it was hard because there are so many remote users.
yeah. So one of the rules we had was like, okay, we're not going to moderate anything unless someone reports it. So we don't
Mm.
have to worry about like all of these users on Gab and whatever they're saying. But if someone reports a Gab user that like violates the rules, then we take
Mm.
action against them. But it just kind of seems like it goes
I feel
on
like
and on
that's
and
a.
on. Go ahead.
What do you think about that, like policy, like in general, just like as far as moderation? Like, would it be better just to let like moderators just like leave stuff alone unless it's reported, or kind of police their content? Because I'm thinking kind of from my perspective, like it can be like a lot of work to moderate everything that's like
Hmm.
on one. Oh,
Yeah, I'm just
sorry,
agreeing. No, go ahead.
I'm on. Um, someone would ask me a question.
Oh, okay.
um, but yeah, I mean, it can be like really time consuming. I would imagine just to always be scrolling through the timeline, especially like as you get more users.
Right.
But then at the same time, if your users don't like regard your rules at all, then that would create a lot of chaos, and you
Yeah.
know by de facto, like a lot of your rules would be broken.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a political question. I would say it's akin to the question, how militarized do you want the police to be? And like
Yeah,
with like a fairly demilitarized police, the way it works is like if there's a problem and like one person has a problem, then they call the police. But the police
right.
aren't like, walking around like stormtroopers on every corner, like trying to find every conflict and police it. So,
Yeah. I mean, the only, and I guess, kind of to bring it back to policing like America too, um, is I guess in like cases of crimes where like they wouldn't necessarily be reported by the people who are around. So I guess like two examples that I can think of is just um, like drug trafficking
mhm.
or like I guess to an extent illegal immigration, but I think it applies a lot better to like drug trafficking because like the people who are like doing the drugs aren't going to report the crime, and the drug dealers are definitely not going to be reporting it either. So you have like this crime that's definitely like on the books where like if you don't do anything proactive, then like nothing's going to be done about it.
Yeah. Um, I'm not really sure what I think about that, but yeah.
I mean, I think if you're the only admin, you kind of do have to police it just to foster a culture of following the rules. But then as you get more moderators, and then like combined with like the users who have been on longer, reporting stuff and being like, hey, like, isn't this against the rules and stuff? Like, I think that can definitely help with that. As far as
Yeah.
like the load on like the admins.
Not to take this too literally, but I'm just thinking there's no real like version of drugs on the Fediverse, I don't think. uh, maybe. And also there's like marijuana, which is one thing, and then there's heroin, which is like it can become an epidemic. Um,
Right.
yeah, and then as far as immigration is concerned, I would say that there's like encouragement to immigrate on the Fediverse.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean like not necessarily as like analogs to like the crimes, but just like the general ideas of just like breaking like the laws of the land.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
kind of like if like people like let's say like I make an instance and say like no outright hate there, but then I go on like a 2 week vacation and I'm not there to moderate, then people break the rules. Then like none of the people who are there breaking the rules. Like let's say my instance has 5 people, and then like I'm one of those 5, and so those 4 people are just like over there breaking the rules while I'm gone. Like nobody's around, and they're not going to report each other.
but I think that's probably fine. Like, I mean, it depends. Like, if you're really concerned about image, like the image of your instance, then maybe you
Mm.
care if someone might see it. But if they see it and don't report it, then probably they don't care that much.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
Basically, I think the human centric approach is like, does anyone actually care about what's happening? And if someone does care, then I guess that's the point when maybe you want to like apply your rules.
Mm.
Um, but if no one cares, as long as like, because like, what's the worst that alt right hate is gonna do? Like in the best case scenario, someone argues against it and has a conversation.
Right.
Um, in the worst case scenario, I guess like uh, people just keep thinking those things and then maybe
Hmm.
like do something bad based on those. I mean, I guess
I
maybe
mean,
someone would
I
say like,
think that what a lot of like the critics of free speech
hmm
are arguing is that like if like enough like alt right people are allowed to speak, then they're gonna radicalize people. Which
yeah,
I guess if to anyone who's actually like communicated with people who are in the alt right, that's pretty ridiculous.
yeah, I agree. And like a lot of
I
what
mean,
people
some people
say is
might be,
hate speech. I don't agree with that it's hate speech either.
yeah, and that's like a really that's a really tough one because there
Hmm.
isn't really like a concrete definition too, which is why I never like anything that will ban hate speech because you never know what that's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, at this point, like next week, like all of Spinster's terms of service or like user rules might be like hate speech for all I know because it's gender critical.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've always been wary of things that ban hate speech, even though like a lot of hate speech I don't like. But if I want to say that, like, I don't know, somebody just insert random like transgender statement. Like I've posted a lot on Quoto, um, but if I want to say something as gender critical, um, all of a sudden that's hate speech now, even though it wasn't like 2 weeks ago. Which is why I like concrete definitions and stuff.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, it's so hard with humans though to like create rules that are concrete. I feel like it's something that we all kind of just have to play by ear and then just react to it in some way. Um,
yeah.
and I'm sure there are people, maybe even listening, that are like, "No, Alex, like everything can be concrete." But well, I think you're wrong. Um, and like with hate speech, um, I think that it's more useful to imagine like what the person is trying to do who is speaking. Like, are they trying to
Mhm.
change hearts and minds? Like, are you really someone who genuinely believes that uh, we have been lied to about the Holocaust and that uh, Jewish people have like this grip on society that we need to like be made aware of, and it'll make it better for everyone if we just acknowledge the Jewish problem. Like, blah 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 blah. Um, but then it's another thing to be like, all Jews deserve the to be burned and incinerated. Blah 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 blah. Like it's kind of like attitude. I feel like is a major part
Mhm.
of whether or not it's worth having a discussion with someone.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I mean, I know in the last podcast you mentioned about like you personally don't want to see racism in your timeline. So,
Mhm.
like, I guess admins of a server might want to remove some of that just so their users don't have to make the decision for themselves. Uh,
Yeah. But
but
then like part of it is too is like I don't browse like the local timelines or the global timelines a lot. So
mhm,
for me, it's like if I go to the local time, like, well, I'm not gonna see in the local timeline because I don't think Quoto because they ban like hate based something like anything like hate based. So I
yeah,
think that would exclude like those facets of the alt right. But like on the global timeline, like if I see anything on there that like doesn't that like offends me or whatever, that's kind of on me. Unless I'm gonna like block the instance or block the user, I'm kind of setting myself up for that. Which is part of the reason why I don't even go on the global timelines anymore, because it's just like too much, and a lot of it's just like, ugh, I don't want to like see that while I'm
yeah.
like chilling in the cafeteria.
Yeah, I do feel like having multiple timeline options solves this problem. Um, I think there should be even more than just home, local, and federated. I think there should also be like timelines that are curated timelines by the admin that are neighborhood timelines, where
Mm.
it'll be like I remember Reddit at one point had this multi-Reddit thing where you could create your own like subreddit groups and
Mm.
view like your personalized multi-Reddit, and it would show like maybe you have one called video games and you just put like the subreddit for all of your favorite
Ooh,
games in it, and then you can
that's so
view.
cool.
Yeah, so I think it would be really interesting if there was Fediverse software, and I'm hoping at some point I can do this with Soapbox, where
Mm.
the admin can put in a timeline, like multiverse timeline, um, that people can click on, and it just shows them like a handful of 3 or 4 instances, local timelines together, and you can kind of
And
just see that.
is that like kind of is that kind of like what you were talking about? Because I did notice you made some posts about like having algorithms like introducing algorithms back into
Hmm.
timelines. Is that kind of what you were talking about?
No, the algorithms thing is more about the order that posts appear in. So for that, I was kind of thinking about people who like to just check in on their social media like once a day for a few minutes.
Mm,
Because the way it currently is, where it's chronological, you really have to be constantly checking it if you want to see everything. Uh,
yeah.
and I think I do think people want algorithms because they want to be able to just like log in and see sort of the top posts of the day and like the most important stuff.
Mm,
But that's a different issue.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do think that that idea is pretty cool. Um, and I think that we actually mentioned this briefly. Is that like I really do miss like the whole like concept and kind of thrill, at least for me, of like making your own algorithms.
Hmm.
Because I remember I would go on iTunes on my mom's computer and just like make like all of these different like smart playlists. Like these are like the top songs,
Yeah.
based on plays if they were played like in the last month or so. And like these are like of the different genres or whatever. Um, and that was always like really fun for me. But it's not like they don't have a feature like that on Spotify. But I think that like in the Fediverse, that could serve like as a really good tool if you want to be like, okay, like here's you know these top posts from these users, like if they have like this amount of like reposts or whatever, or like value reposts over likes, so like the most reposted posts reposted posts will like show up first or whatever. um I think that that idea is like really cool, especially if like users can make like multiple ones, so
Totally.
there can be like here's like you know posts from like the last 15 minutes, or like here's posts that have like a lot of likes, or like here are posts that have like a lot of replies because this is what people are talking about.
Yeah. And while we're talking about this, I'm actually thinking of Reddit again, where they have like these sort of sorting boxes where you can sort by new or by top or by hot, and you can
Mm.
sort like by top post within the past 24 hours. That would be an
Mm.
interesting thing to have on each timeline. Like, what if you could look at the local timeline and you could show top posts within the past 24 hours or within the past 48 hours or whatever, or of all
Yeah.
time even too.
Yeah,
I
but
think
then of
that could do a
course
lot.
it would be great from like a user's perspective, but I do think that that does reintroduce the issue that Twitter's had, where people are like, oh, with their timeline algorithms, people are going to be like gaming the system, or like
Hmm.
Twitter is like picking and choosing the winners of who you actually get to see. Like even if you're following
Yeah,
somebody, you don't see their posts. So I think it's important for that sort of algorithm to be like in the hands of the user, so that
very
way
true.
like people be like, no, it's not your admin who's like keeping you from seeing all your posts from your friend on that one Pleroma instance where like nobody likes his posts.
Right.
Just change your algorithm.
Yeah, because there's definitely like the snowball effect, or the rich
Mhm.
the rich get richer. I think a
Yeah.
algorithm could probably cause that to happen.
Yeah.
Because if
But
it's
then I
in
guess like
a
the
top post for like 5 minutes, then and it's on the very top, then probably a lot more people are going to see it, are going to like it, and then it's going to just keep being a top post.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's a good point. And then of course you also have the other issue where if you decide to like do like the complete opposite, and prioritize stuff that has like no posts and no reposts, then
Hmm.
sure, like it's always going to be fresh, but then you have a risk of a lot of like low quality content, you know, showing up at the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah, I think where the algorithm comes in is that it kind of mixes the two together, where it shows like some top posts and then it also shows some new posts, and then depending on how
Mm,
you react to the new posts, it'll determine whether to continue showing those new posts to other people or not.
nice, nice. And is
I
this
think
like
that's
something
how
that you're
Reddit
working
does it.
on?
No, I'm not working on that currently. The main thing I'm working on right now is Mastodon Engine.
Mm, okay, like within Soapbox.
Yeah, so that's purely a technical thing, but it's
Mm,
just to make forking Mastodon better so that instead of having a hard fork, you can include Mastodon Engine as a dependency of your um, social media project.
Mm.
And I envision Soapbox being something down the line where people can really like heavily customize it and like make it their own. And so this is just a first step in that process.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, yeah, because I do remember what was the name of your website for Soapbox?
Soapbox.pub.
Yeah, Soapbox.pub. I remember going on there and like visiting, just like checking out like the about page of one of them. I think it was like Meanster or something,
Yeah.
and there were like a bunch of like swimming fishes on the background. I thought that was like really cool,
Yeah.
just like having that level of control.
Yeah, so what I'm actually doing with that is whenever I help someone build a soapbox site, I will create a theme for them and then incorporate the theme into Soapbox itself. So
Ooh,
that swimming fish theme is something that anyone can actually use if they deploy a Soapbox site. Um,
ooh, nice.
but my hope is that in the future that it's going to be more customizable so that instead of having to merge the theme back into Soapbox master branch, that you'll be able to just create your own theme. But right now it's not quite there yet.
Mm, yeah, or even I guess one thing that could be cool too is if like from the admin side, um, or maybe in the user side, if the user wanted to, like it could like somehow reach out to the different instance and download the theme and just like load that.
Yeah.
So like if the
Um,
user wanted to be like, oh, I want the fishes on like Gleasonator, then I just like somehow like go over and like set it to download or something.
that's a cool idea. I know Pleroma has been doing some stuff similar to that. Because their themes are very customizable and they have like a file format that represents the theme colors and like
Mm,
values and stuff, and you can just share those and import them into your own Pleroma.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's Pleroma is kind of interesting. I would definitely like check out Pleroma instances more. But like half the time, like their background is like a bunch of furries or something,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to get rid of it. And
Well,
so like when like people see me out there, like, is that like a furry thing? Like,
yeah.
and I'm like, no.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And like some of it is even like built into the user interface. Like there's a cat girl mascot, like anime cat
Yeah.
girl mascot in the Mastodon UI for it and stuff. Um,
Yes.
and but I've heard rumors lately that someone is developing a new option for a Pleroma front end that looks
Ooh.
sort of similar to Soapbox and to Gab UI.
Oh.
I think
That sounds really interesting.
that could potentially be a game changer.
Yeah. But I'm not sure like where that would differ from your project.
Well, so Mastodon is a lot more feature rich, and it's
Mm-hmm.
been developed for longer, and they have a lot more developers working on it. And
Mm.
Pleroma is just not quite there yet in terms of, like, for example, they don't have account migrations the same way that Mastodon does, where
Yeah.
followers can just be moved over. And there's some stuff like anti-spam measures built into Mastodon. Um, so
Mm.
Soapbox is going to continue to be based on Mastodon, um, but I really am hoping that Pleroma gets better because I think that there's a lot of potential for it, and it's probably the better long-term option.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like the speed thing is like something that you mentioned. Like the speed is like it is better. Like I can tell even because a lot of times when I'm on like a Pleroma instance,
Hmm.
I use like the Mastodon front end because at
Yeah.
least the furry is smaller. But even then, like it's a lot faster even using the Mastodon front end.
Yeah, and I mean it's like 10 times faster in terms of the amount of hardware. Like if they set up a Mastodon instance and a Pleroma instance side by side and they use the best hardware on both of them, you shouldn't be able to tell a difference. But
Yeah.
but for Pleroma, you can really get away with paying like $5 a month to host hundreds of users, and
Mm.
on Mastodon, like good luck paying $20 a month to host that amount.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like memory leaks, and it's built on Ruby on Rails, which is not the worst, but I really don't like the Ruby programming language at all for a number of reasons.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think I've ever used Ruby.
Just the way that it imports things. Like some function can be defined somewhere in the code in somewhere like 20 files away from you and you have no idea where it is.
Ooh,
You have to
that's not
search
fun.
you have to search through the entire code base by doing like a find and replace type of thing until you just like
Mm.
reverse engineer where it's located. And
Man.
yeah, in other languages it's really like explicit and it's like from this path import this function.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's insane. Um, let's see. So, so I guess yeah, we did talk about like the Fediverse a lot. I guess kind of staying on that subject a little bit. What do you think about like the whole JoJo controversy? Because that's kind of introduced like a big quandary.
Yeah. So from what I'm not super involved in the conflict, but like I feel like a lot of people saw that on the outside,
Hmm.
and it's pretty interesting. Um, I think that I don't really want to say anything like good or bad about JoJo or anyone else involved. I like JoJo, uh,
Yeah.
and he
I
seems like
mean,
a funny
he's a
funny
he's
kid. But he is a
yeah,
kid.
like he
He's
seems like a
15
nice
years old.
dude.
Yeah.
He's 15. Okay, so he's probably like one of probably the youngest user on the Fediverse then, right?
I'm sure they're younger, but he's super active, and
Yeah.
so like a lot of people have just seen his account because how he's very active.
Yeah.
But so the main controversy, the thing that happened though, was that he posted a picture and said, "This is a picture of my butt," and he's 15 years old.
Right.
So this caused a lot of Fediverse admins to go into just like terror panic mode because
Understandably, like
all of a sudden there's child porn now on the Fediverse. Um,
yeah.
and it
Oh,
turns out
sorry.
though that this was just JoJo playing a joke, and that it was
Right.
actually a picture of just some man, like some pornographic photo of some adult man that JoJo shared as a joke.
Yeah.
And then I've seen now JoJo is like really regrets his actions and like is
Hmm.
begging for forgiveness, and like some people have
Hmm.
forgiven him. But I think the bigger question about all of this is how do we deal with problems like that? Like how do you stop the spread of child porn on the Fediverse?
Yeah. And especially from someone who's just gonna be like, oh, I was just joking. Like anybody can say that.
Yeah. Well, he put a link to where he like the source of what that butt photo was. So uh,
Mm.
I think that the butt photo is in the clear,
Yeah.
but it's still just like if someone says that this is child porn, then you have to take it seriously.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can't just be like, well, JoJo posted it, and you know what he said last time.
yeah.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. Um, he what happened first, like how I got roped into it was just like out of the blue. He just like hit me up and was like hi, and he seemed like super friendly, but it was also like kind of creepy because like within like a few hours he was like also like starting to flirt with me, and I'm like,
hmm
dude. But then he stopped and it was fine. Um, but it was just weird because like kind of looking at his posts, I noticed like one time on one end he'd be like, I'm sorry for like posting this stuff, but then like on the other end he'd be like, well, such and such is mean to me, and like they're about to ban me or whatever. So it just like I don't know. It's kind of hard to read, what he's actually like, what's going on in his head. But I'm rooting for him though. Like,
Yeah.
I definitely think that like eventually he's gonna move past the controversy.
Yeah. I think he's just a kid and is just like maybe a little bit lonely, as many of the people on the Fediverse are, and really
Mm-hmm.
social media in general. I think people who are active on it tend to be a little bit lonely.
Yeah.
Um, and
Like
I think,
there is a direct inverse correlation between my social life and my activity on the Fediverse.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Like, if I'm like having a good day or like I'm just hanging out with like a lot of people, then I'll just like post something at the end of the day. I'll post like a few political things and be like, today was a good day, and like that'll be it. But like if I'm like bored or just by myself, then I'll just like be posting all the time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely lonely. That's like part of the reason why I post as often as I do, because I lost a lot in sort of the
Mm.
like, you know, animal activist group that I was part of, and we moved out of the state like uh, to Texas from Pennsylvania. So
Oh wow.
we're like out of there. Um,
Yeah, that's quite a distance.
yeah. So
Man.
I
So I
yeah,
mean, that's pretty rough because as far as like social stuff goes, like loneliness can be like kind of hard to go through.
definitely.
Um, like have you like been like finding like more friends and stuff, or
Well, I'm actually in
like in real
California.
life, like not necessarily the Fediverse?
Yeah, I'm actually in California right now hanging out with some friends, but they're actually
Okay.
friends that I met over the internet. And yeah, and there are some friends that we have that were formerly a part of the animal rights group that we were a part of. So really,
Oh.
the animal rights group, I would say, was one of the best things that happened in my life, and like in some ways was like led to the worst events of my life too.
Because they kind of like gave you so much, but then also like took away
Took it
so much from
away.
you.
Yeah, like I feel like I made like 500 friends and lost 450 of them.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
mean, they didn't take away MK, so.
Yeah, that's true. And we're like basically life partners at this point.
Hmm. Which is super cool.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, this like whole transgender issue on the Fediverse, like no one is allowed to talk about it in a way
Hmm.
that like people don't want to hear. It's
Hmm.
just ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Which is why I'm glad for like my instance. Like
yeah,
definitely, it's rules. Like I can say stuff like that and just like still be in the clear. And I
yeah,
think probably like to a certain extent, Gleasonator too,
yeah, for sure.
because I think your rules are like slightly more lenient than Quota's, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that was interesting because I had originally thought when you had launched that account that that instance was just for you
Yeah, I mean it
and not for
is.
other people.
It's my personal instance, but I welcome others to join. It's actually based off of a site that I built in middle school, and it had the same
Ooh.
domain, gleasonator.com. And this was before social media, and a bunch of my friends from middle school joined this website, and we would communicate over it, just about like life and video games and like whatever it is that we were up to. And we actually formed like a pretty strong friend group IRL as a result of
Mhm.
this website. But then social media came along and people stopped posting there, and I made some dumb mistakes by like trying to change the forum software to a different forum software that people didn't like as much, and so it kind of just fizzled out of existence. And then I lost the domain name to some domain scalper who was trying to get me to pay hundreds of dollars to him to get it back. And so then I waited for 10 years. And, and then finally, like last year, towards the end of the year, I saw that it was available, so I bought it. And so now it is my personal instance. It has my name in it, but at the same time, it's like furthering the legacy of the original Gleasonator, and so I wanted to allow anyone to be able to join it.
So cool.
Yeah, thanks.
That's super cool. So, yeah, so I think that's probably more than all the time that we have because we went
Okay.
over, I think, a little bit. But I mean, it's a podcast, so there aren't any like time constraints.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess
I'm
if you want to talk about politics a little bit, just
yeah,
like
no, I'm
give
happy.
your
I
favorite
feel
Democratic candidate your shout
oh,
out.
Yang, Yang Gang. Yang Gang 2020.
Nice. So Yang is your favorite.
Definitely. UBI, Universal Basic Income. We need that. It's like
Mm.
the free market doesn't work. Why is it that there's so much demand for things that I create, but no one's paying me anything for it? Why are there 8,000 users on Spinster and like uh, people are using my software and like
Well,
I'm
I mean, people, and you're like why are like so many people using like your software for free,
yeah.
basically? I
Well,
mean, I think part of it is because they can, because like
right.
people aren't like getting Supreme clothes for free. Like, I mean, I think part of it is like I feel like the free market does work, but there are definitely like some flaws and like barriers. So, for instance, like you can't have access to everything, and I think kind of like the UBI, I guess, is like sort of supposed to help with that.
Well, I just feel that we're moving further and further away from like traditional manufacturing jobs and more towards jobs
Mm.
where what you're creating is actually in some way invisible. Like all these
Yeah.
people working at Google are getting paid, like a salary of 200K to be a Google engineer, and they're writing software that, like, the software is just a creative work. Uh,
Yeah.
and
And nobody's gonna be looking really
like,
like at that one guy and be like,
yeah.
"Yo, he wrote like these like 30 lines."
Yeah, and I mean it can just be freely copied over and over again.
Yeah.
We have
I mean, especially
ebooks.
like by the company.
Yeah, we have ebooks, we have digital movies. Everything is becoming digital. Um, but this is not even the part Yang is focused on. Yang is focused on automation, which I think is related, because we have manufacturing jobs the people are being replaced by machines. And why shouldn't that be a good thing? Why do we act like this is a bad thing? We have people on the left wing who are actually protesting replacing factory jobs with machines because they say workers' rights. But like, no, this is the future. I want to live in a world where I don't have to like stand there at a factory and do mundane, specialized labor for all of my life. I want to be able
Yeah.
to like do meaningful things, to build and create things that help people. But it seems
Yeah.
like the more you give to people and the more you help people, the less you get in return. Uh, and I want universal basic income because I think that we should encourage people to give to other people and to try to build a better world instead of just trying to keep this capitalist system alive, and to just
Which I don't. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, and I have been a fan of capitalism, but one thing I do like about UBI is, I guess it's not necessarily capitalistic, but
Mhm.
I think it does it has the potential to breathe life into the UBI, and not into the UBI, but it has the potential to breathe life into sort of capitalism and sort of like
Right.
the economy. Because if you
Totally.
give like everybody just like $1,000, they're going to spend that money
Yep.
probably. I guess if you want to compare it to like the lottery, everybody like blows all their money and then some after they win the lottery. So I feel like the UBI would sort of be like the same thing. People would buy stuff that they ordinarily wouldn't buy.
Yeah.
Um,
And Yang bills it as human-centric capitalism. He's very adamant that he's
mm,
not a socialist,
mhm.
and I
Yeah.
think I think it makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think because his thing is um because he's not pro like giving like taking away like private healthcare or anything, right? Because I feel like his deal is more giving stuff away
Correct.
than taking things away. Um,
Correct.
which is especially when you give them a resource like money is a powerful thing. But
Yes.
I mean, I do have some issues with it. My biggest issue really is like how are you gonna pay for it? That's
So
like a really big hurdle.
yeah.
Um,
So he does want to
which
consolidate.
might be ironic.
He does want to
Sorry.
consolidate some government programs into this. So
Hmm.
um, some government programs like welfare and stuff like that would be uh, consolidated into this $1,000 a month thing, which I think would actually be a good thing. We would like kind of
Mm.
reduce the size of the government a little bit and just
Yeah.
give people the money directly instead of having all this bureaucracy.
Hmm.
Everyone gets it. It's opt in, so like if you're
Mm.
super rich and you don't care, then whatever. But and then the rest would come from a value added tax on
Mm.
tech companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I think my only other reservation really is just that like I feel like it would incentivize like not working or not being productive because you definitely you're going to have people who are more inclined to be productive.
Hmm.
They're definitely going to go out and use that money to go invest and like do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. But at the same time, I think like the majority of people who I'm just going to like keep calling them normies, um,
Okay.
they're not going to like do like that. They're probably just going to just spend the money and just not work. So, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Well, I don't know because if you look at the system now, you have a lot of people who are doing meaningless work, and that work is already being done anyways. But I don't
Yeah.
think it's good for society to do nothing and be rewarded. But now,
Yeah.
of course, you're gonna have those people who take the UBI and go make something out of it. And if they point to the UBI and be like, yo, I made this company that now not only like was I able to get this off the ground, but also because of people having the UBI, they have more money to spend and buy stuff from it. Um, maybe that would serve as inspiration to some
Yeah.
people. But in general, it's just I feel like it's not a good model for society to say, hey, don't work, just get money from the government.
I feel like for most people, $1,000 a month is more of a safety net than it is
Mm.
really a way to live off of completely. Um,
I do keep on looking at this from like my broke college boy,
yeah.
perspective. So
Yeah.
where I basically get like $100 a month. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like when I was living in Philadelphia, I was paying like $900 per month for rent, but then there's also
Mm,
food, gas,
right.
electricity, other expenses, travel, um, and plus I was living in like a shithole neighborhood, and it would have been nice to
Mm,
like be able to live somewhere a little bit better. And
yeah.
I don't think that it's enough 1,000 a month that it's like there's still going to be incentives for people to work and to do things because and if they want to start like a family, then that's definitely
Oh yeah.
gonna cost a lot more.
Yeah.
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 So, but also I think it would improve the public education system a little bit, and that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's good. Yeah. I mean, I think definitely of all of the kind of, I guess, like government handout plans, the UBI definitely seems like to have the most sense, to make the most sense. Um,
Yeah, it's very
because it's gonna
simple.
be like something useful
Yeah.
to like the citizens. Um, so I'm
So,
personally pulling for Tulsi Gabbard. I feel like
yeah.
both she and Gang and not Gang and Yang
Yang
have
Gang.
sort of yeah. I mean they both have really been screwed by the Democratic Party. Um, so
I
I
agree,
would
totally.
like to see Tulsi too because I feel like she's like a super unifying figure. Um,
Yes,
just from like how she talks and like she doesn't run around attacking people like all the other candidates are doing.
totally.
And
I,
she sort of like has her own principles.
I think Tulsi's great. I
Yeah.
like I would definitely vote for her if she got the nomination, but it seems like both
Mm-hmm.
Yang and Tulsi are not really like on the ballot at this point.
Yeah. I think Yang has more of a shot because
Hmm.
he's kind of like Obama and Trump in that he's like really good at using social media.
True, for
Um,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Imagine saying that Trump is good at using social media.
yeah, I guess
but in that like getting the word out and making
right,
people aware of him.
for sure. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't like hate it if Bernie or Warren. I don't know. Warren, I'm not really. She's too much pandering. Um,
Yeah.
and
And also, like, she says a lot of like misleading things. Like, at least like
yeah.
Bernie is kind of straightforward and very, very consistent. So you know who you're voting for, basically.
I
Well, I mean,
just
except he didn't say anything about the gulags, and I don't know. Like, did you did you see the Project Veritas video that came out?
no, I didn't. Oh, maybe was it the one about like with Bernie?
Yeah, and how like a lot of the people in his like campaign were talking about gulags and whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know, cause I feel like you're gonna have people in that you're whenever you hire like a bunch of people, even if it's for something political, you're gonna have like differences of opinion. Like I don't think Bernie was like, so, do you support gulags? but but like, I mean, it is a little bit concerning that like so many people in his camp support the gulags, but at the same time, like, I don't think that necessarily means that he's gonna put gulags,
yeah,
like, into place when if he becomes president. So
yeah. Also, like I guess it depends who's being sent to the gulags. That's gonna affect how people feel about the gulags.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
like I think they when Trump was elected, the right wing wanted Trump to send like all of the Democrats to the gulag. So
Yeah, they really wanted a lot of people to be sent to Guantanamo. I
yeah,
think it was like at
lock
least like Hillary
hashtag lock her
and
up.
Obama.
Blah blah blah. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but the
Which I mean, I do think. Yeah, I don't think that and either. I don't think neither. No matter what, like I don't think that Hillary is going to be indicted on anything,
same.
even if she has done things that are illegal. Like I don't think that anybody's gonna like indict her. And also like she's kind of like an old lady, so like.
Yeah,
But I feel like from I haven't done any like the digging or whatever into like corruption from the Democrat Party or whatever. But it seems like a lot of whatever it is came from Obama, but I don't think that he'll ever really be touched. So I don't even bother anymore.
yeah. Oh well. That's just the state of things.
Well, on that hopeful note, thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to do it another time.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe if we want to talk more about politics, 'cause I do feel like there's like a lot that we could discuss.
Definitely. Yeah, it's been great
All
to
right.
be on.
Yeah, yeah. Great to have you. So yeah, this has been Alex Gleason. Like if you want to let listeners like know like where people can find you and some of the work that you've done.
Yeah, sure. So I'm at Alex at Gleasonator.com on the Fediverse. And my
Yes, the
website,
Fediverse, not email.
yeah, my website is alexgleason.me. And I've been developing Soapbox, which is on soapbox.pub.
Yeah, yeah. So go check that out.
All right,
All
man.
right, thanks. Yeah. All right. All right. Thanks, guys, for
All
listening. I'll be
right.
back next week with another episode.
All right. Bye bye.
All right. See you.